Rob Tebbutt for Boxing News. Delighted to be joined by Shane McGuigan. We are here, Billam-Smith Riakporhe 2 fight week in the beautiful borough of Croydon in London. Shane, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah, long time, mate. What's going on? What's going on?
I've been doing some things. I've been doing a bit of this, a bit of that. You're a family man now. You've got a second child now, so you're a little. There, it's your fault.
No, it's all good, mate.
But nice to see you. I know you've missed me, so yeah, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, Andy doesn't quite cut it, does it? No, it's good, mate. It's good to have you in an actual fight week again. You know, big time Tebbutt. But no, it's good, mate. Chris is in a good place. Press conference is done. Got the weigh-in to do. Fights around the corner. Exciting times.
Exciting times indeed. I just want to go back, of course, to the first fight, Chris Billam-Smith against Richard Riakporhe. It feels like an awful long time ago, but also kind of feels like yesterday. A lot has happened in the years that have ensued since. What are your memories and your recollections of the first fight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was. I don't think it was an ideal preparation for him. He's improved massively since then physically. He's become much better at boxing as well. Yeah, just that's that first fight. It seems so long ago, but at the same time, yeah, it's quite easy to reflect on those memories. So, but that's what happens once you get to 30 and beyond. It just every year just merges into one, and yeah, it just feels like it was around the corner. But there's been so much growth from Chris since then. Yeah, he's been in championship fight after championship fight since then. His first fight straight after that was Craig Glover, and then he obviously won the Commonwealth title. Then he just really excelled from then. He's been in 50-50 fights. He's been the underdog. He's had stadium fights. He's had headlines. His career has just been on a great trajectory. And Richard Riakporhe had a couple of good wins after Chris Billam-Smith, like in Jack Massey. But then there was a fallout with Matchroom, and then there's just been this long stalling process and waiting for the stars to align for him to have his world title moment. And I feel like that he's 34 years of age. This is his idea, his defining moment at Crystal Palace with an opponent that he believes he can win against. He had the opportunity to box Jay Alpatea, didn't take the opportunity. But that is all going to play a big factor against him because he's had very little rounds in the last year and a half, 2 years. This time last year, Chris Billam-Smith was fighting Lawrence Okolie in a stadium fight. Since then, he's beaten a guy in Masterneck. Yes, it wasn't the best performance. It wasn't a very good performance before Lawrence Okolie in Jersey. But when he's up against it, when he's the betting, he's the betting underdog, and touted to lose. That's when you see the best in Chris Billam-Smith, and I feel like he's at his best when he's got that challenger's mentality, and he's a champion going in, but he's going into away soil, the Lions Den in Crystal Palace. It's gonna be a big crowd there. It's gonna be a big travelling support from him. He will walk second, but he has to have that mentality of being the challenger and being the underdog because that's where he relishes it.
You mentioned there about kind of it being in a stadium fight and Chris boxing at the home of Bournemouth, which is something that he dreamed of since he was a young child. How valuable is that experience of having done that? And obviously that comes with a different type of pressure of being at home than being the underdog and boxing in London as opposed to Bournemouth. How much do you feel that gives Chris an advantage on Saturday night?
Say that again.
How much of an advantage do you think it gives Chris on Saturday night, the fact that he's been through that process and had that pressure?
Yeah, I thought you spun me, but with the stadium, I mean, yeah, that's it. He's been through this process. He's been the underdog. He's been in a stadium. It's all going to add to his favour. I really believe so. I think Richard Riakporhe is a perfectionist. He doesn't like to get hit. He keeps stating that Chris Billam-Smith is, he's teak tough and it's going to crack the glass and it's going to be a shattering process. All this bullshit, right? That's just the fact that he's stating the fact that Chris likes to take shots, or he thinks he likes to take shots, and he feels like he has to win fights by taking shots, but he never really like he's had fights where he's dropped back, he's used his boxing ability, he's had fights where he's had to take it to them, he's had fights that, you know, sorry, everyone's got a Ring doorbell these days. He's had fights where, you know, he's been behind and he's had to turn it around. He's been hurt and he's had to turn it around. You know, these are all experiences that you can't buy, and you certainly don't get them by matching yourself, because that's what he's done. After the Sam Hyde fight, he took a few. He got some confidence. He beat Chris. He beat Jack Massey. Both of those performances were lackluster performances. They got hard because they were fought at pace. Ever since then, he's matched himself against people that are counter punchers, guys that are trying to walk Richard onto him. And he's 6'5". He's not stupid. He's a clever dude as well. He's not going to fall into traps. So, you know, we're not going to. We understand that we're not going to try and sit back and try and time this guy. We know the way we have to win this fight, and you know it's we're going to have to be strategic. We're going to have to be sensible, selective as well. But we have to put turn the screw and put the foot down round by round. And I think there's got to be a good game plan behind it, which is what we've worked on, and it's exciting. It's around the corner now. Looking forward to it.
When devising a game plan, obviously they've boxed before, but it was a long time ago. They've progressed and developed as fighters, as people since then. How much stock do you put in the first fight, or is this kind of a new fight, so to speak?
It's got to be a new fight. You know, Richard's improved, Chris has improved. Chris used to waste a lot of energy on the outside, didn't back his engine, didn't know how to pace himself through 10 rounds, never mind 12. Didn't box to his strengths in the first fight. Richard loaded up in the first fight. He wasn't boxing to his strengths. He's telegraphing his shots. So they're both going to be a lot better. And, you know, it's going to be a much higher skilled contest. It's still going to have that air of they can hurt each other, even though Richard, you know, might not say he was hurt in the first fight. He was hurt in the first fight a few times. Chris was obviously like hit with a couple of decent shots. A knockdown was counted against him. It was a little bit of a push, but he was hurt in the fight. So like, you know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how, you know, who gets it right on the night, and yeah, you're right. It's the game plan. You can't really reflect on the first fight. We can take a few things away, and we've worked on a few things. We've watched a lot of tape of him, things that he does well, things that he doesn't do well, where he struggles. But we've got to have ultimate respect for Richard Riakporhe and what he's capable of doing, and that's knocking people out at any given moment. So, you know, we have to make sure that it's executed properly and this concentration held throughout 36 minutes or less.
You mentioned there about kind of the inactivity of Richard Riakporhe, which seems to be kind of one of the themes of the fight, I suppose. Obviously, I understand that each fighter is different, and you know, inactivity can affect one type of fighter much more than it can another fighter, and vice versa. But generally speaking, what does a fighter lose from inactivity? How does that affect them? I remember speaking to Andy Lee once, and Andy Lee said to me that basically, even when you get back into the gym, shots that your body's usually conditioned to take in, you're not so much. What's your kind of understanding of it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you've got some fighters that can just do it. You know what I mean? You got David Hay that used to box once a year because of pay-per-view. Yeah, he used to obviously put a lot of emphasis into really building the fight up, spending a long time building the pay-per-view numbers up. And he had the talent and ability to be able to box, you know, once a year. Whereas other fighters, and also there's got to be an element of like, how can their body handle where they're at in their career? Can their body handle fighting 3 times a year? Is there a 10-week camp prior to each fight? So it's 30 weeks of the year they're in camp. If they're late on in their career, they don't have the ability to do that. So that's why you see a lot of fighters in the tail end of their career going to like 1-2 fights. But Richard Riakporhe is a guy that I believe will be better if he was active, because he struggles with nerves. You know, he used to be at the Lynn. You have to really big him up to get him to get out, get his foot, you know, into the boxing ring. Initially, he used to really be shy kid. I think people with that mentality and people that are like overcoming a lot of obstacles to get themselves in the ring, ability-wise, it's there, but it's the mental side of it, and it's an everlasting. I mean, Andy Lee's talking about the physicality of it, the hurt. My dad said that he had 18 months off and came back, and he said it felt different. You know, the shots felt different. His body wasn't recovering. Dad was a world champion at 24. By the time he was coming back, he was like 27, 28. He'd been boxing since he was like 9 years of age or 10, so he had a lot of miles on the clock. But Richard is a guy that hasn't had a lot of amateur experience. He had started to have a good run in the professional game. You could see there was genuine change, and now he spent a long time in the gym, in a safe environment, in a controlled environment. You can't simulate in the gym. You can't go down to 10-ounce gloves, and you can't have people, even if you're paying sparring partners, and you might say, look, there's a bonus on you dropping me. It's still a friendly, they might, if they're sparring 10 times or 8 times in camp, you get pally with them. There's not that real nastiness in it, and you can only do that by going through the process. And I think that's why activity is a huge factor. And we're very confident and happy with our training camp. We're confident and happy with the activity that we've had, the occasions that he's gone through, how he's overcome it. It's just that he's a completely different person than what he was, 5 years ago.
By his own admission, the Masternak performance wasn't one of Chris Billam-Smith's best, I think it's fair to say, particularly early in the fight. How important is it that he doesn't allow Richard Riakporhe that same success as Masternak had early in the fight?
Yeah, Masternak's a very awkward fighter. He's tough. He's got a good work rate, and he's got a good punch output for a cruiserweight. So he's not a massive puncher. So you're looking at him and thinking, right, well, I'll take that. Wait, there's the third, fourth, maybe the fifth shot coming, and they're not knockout shots, but they're hurtful shots because they've got 15.5 stone behind them, or 15 stone, whatever they rehydrate to. And that just accumulates and compounds over 4 or 5 rounds, and that's where you get marked up, and you get those shots that aren't really hurting you early on that start to hurt you after 4 or 5 rounds. And Chris was never out of his comfort zone in that fight, but picked up a silly cut. Had to get hit too many times for him to switch on. It's very hard to go from 15,000 seat arena, being touted to be the guy to lose. Against Lawrence Okolie, who's the most feared puncher in the division. We had a lot of respect for Lawrence. He was in the gym for 3.5 years, so we knew how good he was. And then winning that fight, the pinnacle of his career, that might never be topped again. Even if he goes and bloody boxes whoever afterwards, even if he becomes unified or undisputed, it still might not top that night, because it was just a moment in time. And then to go back to the BIC in 3,000, it sold out, it was great, atmosphere was fantastic, against a guy that's in his late 30s, started when he was been pro like 17 years or 18 years. I think he turned pro at like 19, 20, had over 50 fights, had a handful of losses, only lost at the top level, but still had those losses and never won a world title. It's kind of like, and then you're the betting favourite going into it, and you're trying to tell the press to say, look, this guy's still got something. Trust me, he gave Tony Bellew a really hard fight. He gave this person a hard fight, that person a hard fight, and you're kind of convincing yourself into being in a challenging position, or in a challenge, up against a good challenger. And I just feel like that whole process took his eye off the ball a little bit. As much as he tried not to, it was very hard. And then obviously Masternak was landing a few shots early on. Chris said it wasn't hurting him at all. But as I said just previously, it's the third, fourth, fifth shot, and it's just the accumulation and a volume over 10 to 12 rounds. That's what catches up with you.
Chris has kind of made his name really in this country as one of the most exciting fighters. All action fighters, Robin Dubois fight aside. Everything else has been pretty exciting so far in his career. But the flip side of that is, he's not Pernell Whitaker. He's not the most elusive. But do you think he's on the decline? Richard Riakporhe seems to think so. Or do you feel like that's him potentially clutching at straws?
No, that's exactly what he's doing. I think he's trying to talk this narrative into existence in his own head, and it's kind of like the Ali moment where I'm going to drop him in 6, and then it just happens, and he says, I told you so, but this isn't going to be the I told you so moment. This is like, oh shit, people will reflect and say, you shouldn't have took that guy. Even though he's not taking Chris Billam-Smith lightly, Chris does a number on him. They'll say, oh, you shouldn't have just banked on him being shot worn and tired and having won too many hard fights. Chris is an extremely fresh 33. You know, he had 43 amateur fights. Richard Riakporhe's 34. He's a very, very fresh 34 as well. You know, he's been in his hard fights, but he's very elucid. He's compass mentis. He's clear as a whistle up top. So you know, when you talk to him, you can see a deterioration in fighters. You can see a glaziness behind their eyes. You can see where training camps and where hard fights catch up with him. And I'm very close to Chris Billam-Smith. I'd never let him get into that position, because that's when, you know, long-lasting damage comes about. And you know, there's much more life than if you know, to box. There's much more to life than just boxing and a few coins that come with it. You know what I mean? It's about your family. It's about your health, and it's about your longevity and how you live with your wealth after boxing, and that's the most important thing. So, you know, if he was ever on the decline, I'd be the first person to tell him. But he isn't. He's in his peak. He's in his prime. And Richard Riakporhe knows that. He's just, as I said, trying to clutch his straws, talk it into a reality, into existence, and it's not going to work with us because we're too savvy for that.
Richard obviously talking about his punching power. We've all seen that in various of his fights. Kind of put this to Chris, I'll put it to you. Do you feel like Chris's punching power is going slightly under the edge? Do you think that's been slightly overlooked ahead of Saturday night?
He's 12-1 for Chris Billam-Smith in a knockout.
Not quite. 7-1 at Bet365. In the second half of the fight, I think it's 12-1.
Well, it was 14-1.
Yesterday, the stoppage was 50, because I did my betting preview yesterday. 15-2 for the stoppage yesterday. It's now 7-1. So the money's coming in on Billam-Smith.
There was someone that put some money on it being 12-1, 7-12, I think it was, or 14-1, 7-12 a few days ago. So not me. I don't bet. God-fearing person, and but
gamble responsibly.
Yeah. But I understand that people do, and I understand that that would be a silly bet, because you got 15 stone versus 15 stone. Anything can happen in a fight. You know, people, even if it gets stopped in a punch, a cut via a punch, it's still a stoppage. So it's quite a risky move from the betting, from the bookies, I should say.
Going into this fight, I'm always quite keen to kind of discuss with you when you go up against. I mean, we've spoken about in the past when you've gone against Freddie Roach, for example, when you had Josh Taylor against Ivan Baranchyk. Not coached against Angel Fernandez, I don't think, so far in your career. Looking forward to that on Saturday night?
I don't know why I'd be looking forward to that. I mean, there's no disrespect towards him, but no, I'm excited to avenge the loss and the blemish that Chris Billam-Smith has on his record. It doesn't matter if it's Ray Arcel, Freddie Roach, Manuel Stewart, and any of them come back, you know, from the dead to well, obviously Roach isn't dead, but you know, to coach him, it doesn't make a difference to me. It's about the fighter, and you know, that's potentially narcissistic and egotistical to be going up against other people and thinking about it like that. It's, you know, it's about them and making sure that they get it right. And at the end of the day, yes, we all win, but they win because their careers go on. I will continue to coach, and I'll continue to get results with fighters. So this is a huge moment for him, and for Richard Riakporhe. So for us, we're just byproducts of the fighters.
What have you made, or if you've noticed any difference in the Mark Tibbs Richard Riakporhe compared to the Angel Fernandez Richard Riakporhe?
Yeah, listen, I mean, he's more refined. He's more reactive up top with his hand defences and his counters. So someone like Chris that fights mid to short range and gets a lot of success there, he'll be more dangerous in that range. But then I think he's a little less dangerous and a little bit more predictable. Even though he's neater, he's more predictable at distance. So, but that's just from an observation standpoint, watching it. You know, sometimes that rawness was quite hard to read, and he was so determined to get his shot off, and it was firing out of fear with Mark that he was heightened, he was alert, and he was like firing off the cuff, and that's quite hard to read, especially with a guy with long range and he's that height and that size. Now he's trying to be cuter, and okay, out of 10 opponents, all different styles, that might be more effective, but I'm not sure if it will be more effective with Chris Billam-Smith.
Do you think this is a more or less dangerous fight than the Lawrence Okolie fight?
It's a more dangerous fight. I think he can punch at different ranges. Chris has done less rounds with him, but I don't think he's got the ability to switch it up that Lawrence does. Like, Lawrence is a better fighter, in my opinion. He's operated at a better level, amateur, pro, sparring, gone to camps all over the place. You know, Richard Riakporhe was signed by Dylan White because he did half decent in the sparring with Dylan White. A lot of people have done pretty well in sparring with Dylan White. You know, Lawrence Okolie had gone off and sparred Tyson Fury, he'd sparred AJ. He's done the rounds, and everyone has a story about Lawrence Okolie in the gym. So I just believe that was a slightly it's like once this fight will be equally as dangerous, but as I said, adaptability with Lawrence, I think he has a little bit more.
Just on Chris, I kind of put this to him a short while ago. Obviously, there was a period of time where he was the young whippersnapper in the gym, and he was surrounded by the likes of George Groves, David Haye, Josh Taylor, etc., etc. It's obviously slightly further along the line now, and he is the world champion of the gym. He's the old warhorse of the gym, so to speak. What is it like for you? Obviously, I understand over the years that you've had, you've always liked to have prospects and people at various different stages of the career. Having somebody like Chris as kind of, the top of the tree in the gym, what does that give to other fighters in the gym?
It's been great. I've always had it, as you said. I've always had a great role model at the top. Whether it was George Groves or, give him his credit, Carl. He was a good world champion at the time. Josh Taylor came through off the back of those guys. Groves started to be the world champion in the gym. Chris Billam-Smith came through. You had Luke Campbell, Olympic gold medalist, didn't get the world honours, but was in world title fights. Great performances. We've had Lawrence Okolie. We've had Dan Dubois. We had a great host of people come through. He's been the one that stood the test of time, the best, and I think he's been the person that's improved the most in the gym. And I think for the young now whippersnappers, as you're saying, in the gym coming through, like the Adam, he's 21 years of age. He's not even 22 yet. You got Caroline. If they were in camp with a chaotic world champion, Ricardo Mayorga, right, at the top of the gym as the world champion, or an Edwin Valero or someone like that, or they're not good. I mean, they're great world champions and they're exciting and they're entertaining, but are they good role models? With Nassim Hamid, he was fantastic. He was box office, he was amazing. But if you're coming into a gym and you're looking up at Nas, flashing, being flashy, coming in 4 hours late, doing everything on his own time, doing everything with this chaotic circus around them, then you kind of, if you're a young, aspiring fighter, you think that's the right way to do it. And there's only one or two Nassim Hamids. There's only a few people that can succeed in chaos. And for someone like Chris, he just that lifestyle would never have suited him. He has to be going to bed with an eye mask and mouth tape on at 8:30 with no screen time. Because that's how to get the most out of Chris Billam-Smith. He used to be rested, well recovered, well fed, hydrated. You stick every little box to maximise his potential and his ability, and he can get to the end of his career and he can say, "There's nowhere in the world I could have gone to have got 1 more %." That's what, as for me, that's what I wanted him to say. Couldn't have gone anywhere else. And said, hindsight's a great thing. Loads of fighters finish their career, and I've had fighters that have come to me late on in their career and they've got their success late on and they've gone, "I should have come in earlier." And you're like, hindsight's a great thing. Everything happens for a reason. You make decisions because maybe you weren't mature enough to make that decision when you were 24 or 22. But Chris has been he's been in the gym nearly 8 years now. I think it is 7.5, 8 years, and we've maximised every ounce of his ability. Psychologically, he can either get more, and we can get the right fights to showcase what he's capable of. But he's just a fantastic role model, and he's been a pleasure to train. It's been a privilege, and I would do the process 10 times over, because it's been effortless from my standpoint, and it's been tedious at times getting in. He's not the fastest learner, but we've got the desired result. And for a guy that was touted to be lucky to win a British title, when he turned professional, now to become British, Commonwealth, European, world champion, defending it. We're still moving. We're still going on for the unified. He's going on for this fight in America. He's still looking to prove people wrong, and that is the definition of a role model and a champion.
Obviously, I appreciate it's difficult to do when you're in it, and you're certainly focused on Saturday night. But with everything that Chris has achieved, does it make it all the more sweeter that he wasn't necessarily touted to be this, that, and the other when he first turned over? Does it give that little bit of extra to you as a trainer?
Yeah, but also it's the athlete. You know what I mean? It's like I think that's what a lot of people could get frustrated with, because Shane's done a great job with him, and I'm like, listen, I know I've done a great job with Chris, but he's also done a fantastic job. Like, you have to be coachable. You have to be able to want to be coachable. Put yourself in the fire line to try new things. And it won't, and you might have to take 2 steps back, or 1 step back, or 2 steps back to take 10 to go forward. And you've got to be mentally strong enough and resilient enough to feel like you've got to strip it all back and get back to the basics. And at the end of the day, execution on the first shot, and it's pretty much like about 80% of top level boxing is how you execute that first shot. You can't, you get low level boxing, you put their heads down, they just start throwing punches at each other, and it's like, it's a fantastic fight. I can't watch those fights. I struggle to watch Southern Area title fights because there's no thought process behind it. It's just effort. And for me, like, I want to be involved at top end boxing. I understand boxing from a certain perspective, and that's what I feel like it is what makes me a good coach. And you have to have the athlete to be able to has to be able to understand it and then willing to go out and try and execute it, and that's where you get the real good results. But he's been that guy. You know what I mean? He's been a guy that's been able to improve and look to improve even when things have been tough and challenging.
Obviously not looking past Saturday night, but all being well in your point of view, and Chris Billam-Smith does get past Richard Riakporhe, the 2 names that have been banded about. Obviously Jai Okolie, now 2-time IBF champion, but anyway, put that to one side. And of course Zurdo Ramirez, 2 southpaws, one based in America, one seemingly kind of based in Saudi for the foreseeable. Which one of those fights would you like for Chris Billam-Smith?
To be honest, either. I mean, I feel like Jai Okolie is a fantastic fighter, and it would be great to box Jai Okolie for undisputed. If Chris wins on Saturday, if he goes out and beats Zurdo Ramirez, and Okolie gets Noel Giver, or what's his name? Yeah. He used to be Noel Giver and now changed his name, but WBC champion. Then 8 months time or 10 months time, you could be looking at an undisputed fight. That would be the icing on the cake, because it's very rare that you get a chance to box for an undisputed. Obviously, look how long the heavyweight division's taken to get that, and if we could get that for a cruiserweight title, it wouldn't be that hard to do. I don't think. I think at this stage in boxing, with Riyadh season, Okolie being heavily involved with Riyadh season, I think it could be done, and if they just have to want to do it. And I think the most important thing for us is to get through Saturday night, continue to prove people wrong, and go and beat Zurdo Ramirez or go and box Jai Okolie.
Last quick couple from me. Do appreciate the time so close to the fight. On one of your ex-fighters, Lawrence Okolie, somebody that we've mentioned recently. Now, is he downstairs, is he? I'll pop over and see him in a bit. Now a 2-weight world champion, of course, picking up the Bridgerweight title with a first-round stoppage win over Lucas Rosansky. Obviously, I know that,
Are you going to call it a 2-weight world champion?
It's a world title in a new weight class. I don't make the rules.
Like, this is no discredit to Lawrence Okolie. I've got lots of time and love for that guy. But you said a WBA regular belt is not winning a world title, right? You said that quite recently. It is a version of a world title, and you obviously had the cruiserweight division that came in quite late, and people discredited that. And obviously Evander Holyfield went on to win it, and a couple of big names went on to win it, and then it became an established division. But it's hard to call it a world title, right? Because there's plenty of heavyweights that probably could make that weight.
Well, the undisputed champion is within that weight.
Huh?
The undisputed champion at heavyweight is under the 224-pound limit.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Go on.
Nevertheless, nice to see Lawrence Okolie getting back in the win column, of course, and somebody who I know that you mentioned there, you know, have an awful lot of respect for, and even when he boxed Chris, there was no ill will from either side.
No, definitely not. And that guy that he boxed, like, knocked out Alan Babich, but Alan Babich's best wins like below British level, surely, right? Did he knock out Molina? He knocked out somebody like that was just really shot.
Ran over to Molina in the first round.
Exactly, but it's not a prime Molina. So his wins are very low level, and that guy was flattered. I mean, every cruiserweight champion and probably anyone in the top 10 in the cruiserweights would have beaten that Polish dude. So, but I'm happy that Lawrence has done that. I just think it's hard to call him a two-weight world champion. And I think I think there's huge fights for him at heavyweight. I genuinely believe Lawrence Okolie could beat Fabio Wardley. I believe he could beat. He could definitely give Fraser Clark a good run for his money. He's in the mix to do yes, he's not world level, but he has a couple of fights like that at heavyweight, and uses his speed to his advantage. He won't be able to hold and nullify them because he won't have the upper hand when he's holding, and it will actually be tiring him out. It'll force him to box at length more, and as soon as you force Lawrence Okolie to box at length and you're slightly slower, he's always struggled with people like Chris, people like David Nika when he come in and sparred. He always struggled with the slightly quicker guys, and these heavyweights are happy to give away shots, and he has world-class power. He has world-class power at cruiserweight. He's got heavyweight power, and I think he could do really well at heavyweight.
Back to your current stable of fighters, a couple of weeks removed from a disappointing night for Craig Richards out in Saudi Arabia, coming up short against Willie Hutchinson. A frustrating night in Saudi. Yeah,
frustrating night. Willie Hutchinson performed very well. Cannot take anything away from him. It was his night. We frustrated for Craig. He'd been in the gym 5 months or 4 or 5 months. It's a big transition for a guy that's 9 years a professional and going from a system that's quite different to ours. We like Tony and Peter. They put a lot of emphasis onto the conditioning, and they put a lot of emphasis onto like that side of it, and they pad differently. So there has been a big change, and it was one of them ones we always knew that. Talk about Chris taking 1 or 2 steps back to take 10 going forward. You have to be willing to do that, and sometimes when you're matched hard, it just doesn't come off. And I believe, myself and Craig were just chatting the other day, like, it's going to be great because the expectations of him now, he has a lot more to give. He really does. And people will be much more inclined to take fights now. And I think it's really down to him to figure out his body, how he performs, because he's got a brilliant engine, and he's much more of like a sustained effort rather than a rev it up, drop it down, explosive guy. Like once he gets that pace just slightly higher, then he can be really, really effective. Just get used to being at a slightly higher pace. And someone like Willie Hutchinson that's got decent power, awkward as hell. Listen, you don't win the Youth World Championships and get signed by David Hay and Shelley Finkel if you're not good. You don't have Dominic Ingle literally drop the whole of everybody in his gym to train Willie Hutchinson because the kid was that special. Billy Joe in the gym, he had Liam Williams in the gym, he had Kell Brook. Like he put a lot of effort and emphasis on Willie Hutchinson. BT, now TNT, he was the poster boy. He was the guy that's going to come through. And Lennox Clark knocked him out when he was weight drained and had a lot of problems outside the ring. We always knew that that was going to be a really hard fight for Craig Richards. It's one that he could win though, and he can win it. If we boxed him again, I would be confident in Craig winning it. He just got it wrong, and and he's kicking himself. That's the frustrating thing. He's really kicking himself because. But look, Willie Hutchinson will surprise a lot of people because, I think he's one of them guys that thrives once the pressure's off him. Once the pressure's away from him, and everyone was saying, "Oh, look, it's pretty, it's a pretty guaranteed win for Craig to just, just with the experience and who he's been in with." He thought Willie Hutchinson was thinking, "This is great. No one's expecting me to win. I'm just gonna, go in, do my thing," and he did. He was sharp. He was powerful. He was awkward as hell. And I think that we've got to give him his credit. But Craig Richards will be better, and he'll come back.
On the same card, fantastic win for another one of the ex-charges in Daniel Dubois, obviously somebody who you trained for a couple of years. Fantastic win over Filip Hrgović in a pretty entertaining heavyweight battle.
How did you have the fight?
It's a good question. I'll actually have the scorecard on the Boxing News app, so I'm going to get it out now because we have the live scorecard feature on the Boxing News app in case anybody hasn't. Well,
you lost the first 6 rounds, right? 5 rounds.
I think I may have had Hrgović ahead, yeah, but let's have a look. So results, just logging on now. Remember, you can log all of your scores, so you have to get the opportunity to plug it in. You get the merchandise on there. You also sign up, get your Boxing News subscription. So I had, at the time of the stoppage, I had Hrgović ahead. I had 68-65 for Hrgović at the time of the stoppage.
3 rounds ahead, going into the 8th. Yeah, I think he won the first 5 rounds. I think Daniel won the 6th and 7th, just the 6th and 7th. Yeah. So he was coming into the fight, gave away a lot of shots early on, and I feel like everyone just expects Daniel to have quit or to have. But I mean, I've had the guy in the gym. I always said it. You've seen him. You come down the gym and you've seen him. He's a brilliant gym fighter. I just said once this guy gets the confidence to be able to do it on the night, he is a huge problem for anybody. And he went into the Usyk fight after leaving me and performed well. Pressure was off him, and then he's obviously boxed Gerald Miller. Got a lot of confidence from that, and always fancied that fight against Hrgović. So credit where credit's due. I'm genuinely really happy for Daniel because he was a boy when he boxed Joe Joyce, and that fight put him back a long way. It put him back a lot, and no matter how many times I could talk to him behind closed doors, listen, you're only a kid then, and my dad and other people around and just anyone really that was coming in just giving their two pence worth, everyone was like, yeah, you're only a kid then. But until he really experienced a second wind in a fight and getting hit, sustained, and not getting dropped and being able to take the shots and still having that inner belief to come back, that's the dangerous Daniel Dubois, and it was always in there. Can he give those shots away at a slightly high, not a higher level, but against a better puncher? No. But someone like AJ doesn't have anywhere near that same output that Filip Hrgović has with his right hand. So it's a very interesting fight, and I'm as I said, really happy for him. But he was down in the fight, and his inner belief won him, and that was for me was the best thing of that night. Technically he was getting hit far too much, but he believed that he could win.
Mentioned the Anthony Joshua fight. It looks as though that could be next for either the IBF interim or for even indeed the full version. How does that fight go?
It's a problem fight for Anthony Joshua. Everyone's going to say that Daniel Dubois is going to get flattened because they'll see that fight, but the last person to punch in combination like Daniel Dubois was Andy Ruiz. So, he struggles with guys that let their hands go. He wants guys to sort of sit back, and even if they're like Usyk, where they're creating an angle and they're throwing like fast, quick shots, like throwaway shots and setting traps. Like AJ kind of likes that chess game. I feel like he will be confident against Daniel, but it might be false confidence. He'll have to be have the team around him drumming him up with loads of confidence, and if he doesn't get him out of there within 3 rounds, I think it's a nightmare fight for him.
Okay, right. I think we're about there now. There's quite a lot of traffic coming through in the last 5 minutes behind the camera, but we will the final point will be on Saturday's main event, of course, Chris Billam-Smith against Richard Riakporhe. How does that fight play out, Shane?
It's going to be a grueling fight. It's going to be a fight that's got a bit of everything. It's going to have counter punches. It's going to have grit and determinations, blood and guts. I believe they both can hurt each other. I think, and I'm confident that my man will win, and he'll win through a strategic, sustained effort and a inner belief that he can win. And that's Chris Billam-Smith. He's in one. That's what he is. He's just a guy that, even when the chips are down, he still believes he can win, and that is a hard man to beat. But we cannot give away shots early on. He's got world-class power, and Chris knows that, and he respects that. So we have to be switched on early, and we're going to have to chip away.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Shane McGuigan, always a pleasure. Has been a while, but always a pleasure to sit down and catch up with you. I'm sure we'll catch up beforehand, but if not, all the best on Saturday night.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks, mate.